In our previous episodes, we explored mystics, magic, and music. Now, in this installment, we're going to look within, from Marvel's The Thing to the work of Michael Chabon to Gollum from Lord of the Rings. The Golem character has resonated and endured for years, but why? What does it tell us about ourselves?
In this episode of Reboot, Rescored presents The Golem, we'll be taking a look at the Golem as us.
This segment features the music of Universal Eyes, a band comprised of members from Threshing Floor, who scored the first episode of our series. Universal Eyes is a musical joint venture, the culmination of Universal Indians and Wolf Eyes, two significant groups of the Michigan progressive underground music scene of the early 1990s. The group consists of Nate Young, John Olson, and Gretchen Gonzalez Davidson.
It's interesting when I look at this film and that we're seeing this story that is so particular to this group of people, but that I can connect with, that so many other people can connect with. They can connect with the people with the story. I can even connect with the Golem himself.
Yeah, great storytelling often serves as a mirror that allows us to see ourselves. And I'm thankful that we live in a time where that mirror is showing a much broader perspective of the human experience. We're seeing representation from groups of people that have long been ignored by the cinematic lens. And even though in 1920 we don't necessarily get a wide swath of representation, it's amazing how this particular specific story from Prague seems to resonate out all over the world, and people in our modern age from various gender representations, from various sexual representations, from various ethnic and racial representations still seem to see themselves in the story of the Golem.
There's something to feeling like the outsider.
Yes.
To being like, to seeing yourself in that, which is why I'm so excited to talk to our guest today. Riva Lair is a world-renowned artist, writer, and curator who focuses on representations of people who have been stigmatized by physical embodiment, sexuality, or gender identity. Her acclaimed memoir, Golem Girl, was published by Penguin Random House in October 2020. Ms. Lair is on faculty at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and an instructor in the Medical Humanities Department of Northwestern University. We got the chance to talk with Riva about how the Golem represents something that can connect us all. Riva, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
It's my pleasure.
Well, I think we kind of have to jump into it. Tell me a little bit about your connection to the Golem. I mean, it's the title of your memoir. How did you come about it? What is your personal connection to the Golem?
I would say that the central conceit is that I am construction. That through medical technology, surgeries, that on a physical level, I've always felt like a built creature as much as a born creature. But I also, in writing the memoir, ended up thinking quite a bit about what it means to be built by the people around you and by society. So I focused a lot on the time period in which I was growing up and how formative that was. And then as the book goes along, the primary person in the beginning to shape me was my mother. But then after that, I became, as I reached adulthood, I started to become a portrait artist. And I write a lot about portraiture as a series of encounters that are highly formative for who I am as well. So the idea of builtness, of outsiderness, the Golem keeps unfolding for me.
Riva, do you remember the first time that you heard the story of the Golem and the impact it had with you?
I don't. I remember seeing Der Gollum, the In der Welt kommen, I think something like that, the 1916-ish silent film when I was in college, I think, early college. And I remember being shaken by it. It's a disturbing piece of filmmaking, and I didn't know until recently that the director plays Der Golem. But I had always been very attached to the Frankenstein story, certainly the Bride of Frankenstein story, and then seeing Der Golem, and thinking about it subsequently and realizing that underneath Frankenstein, one of the pillars was that narrative.
With the Golem, there is a sense of otherness, of he is a part of the community, but an outsider. I know so much of your work works with stigmatized bodies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
the people I work with, I'm interested in stigma, as you say, and but stigma comes from a lot of places. Most of the people I work with have some kind of physical morphology that has defined big parts of their life, disabilities or ways of being formed that may not be functional disabilities but become social disabilities, but also queer people, trans people, complexly gender, I can't think of the word I want, presenting, people of color, not to say that they are, the stigma there comes entirely from context. There's nothing inherent. But, people of color so often in situations where they're made to feel not part of the central community or the valued community, I should say. And just people who have always felt like an oddball. Some of the people I work with are just, you would never know, but they have a real sense of alienation because of other factors. So what I look for is what that produces in their life and in the work they do and in their sense of embodiment.
I think it's also one of those things, and I see this in the film and I see this in your work, where it's a balance between hypervisibility and invisibility, where the whole person, the whole creature is not taken into account. So I think for my final question, what do you think we need to do so that people are seen as their whole selves? Through their art, through their agency, what are steps that the world can do in general so that representation is of the whole person and not just one silo of who they are?
Well, I would say one part of it is that when there is an aspect of a person that you find disturbing, try and remember that that is that it's a paradox. So on one hand, if you are deaf, it means that or reduced hearing, it means that some part of your body is doing this thing. It also means that you have this whole weight of experience. And so someone encountering someone who is different has to both hold these things in their mind, that on one hand, it's just a body part, or it's just some aspect of cognition. And it doesn't need to be loaded with every metaphoric fear that you can come up with. At the same time, you have to realize that because this person has cognitive, behavioral, psychiatric, experiential, morphological difference, that does mean that they're carrying a huge amount of experience.
Riva, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We're eternally grateful.
I think what you're doing is great. The Golem needs to continually be reinterpreted and re-understood.
Join us next time on Reboot, Rescored presents The Golem, where we'll be looking at different iterations of the Golem throughout film, myth, and pop culture.